Good evening. Call the October 3rd, 2022 Davie County Commissioners meeting to order. I'll ask Commissioner Jones to lead us in the invocation.
Sir, thanks. Let us pray. Father, we thank you for your mercy, your grace, and your goodness. Father, tonight we especially lift up those that have been in the path of the storm this past week. Father, we pray for healing. We pray for rebuilding. We pray, Father, that you touch those that are on the front lines of cleaning up and protecting and searching for life. And Lord, we thank you that, Father, you chose in your sovereignty to pass that storm over us. We thank you for the rain. But Father, we tonight just seek mercy, goodness, and grace for those that have been injured, for those that have been hurt, and for those families we ask for peace. Father, we ask for wisdom and discernment as we do your business tonight. We do the business of this great county. We thank you for sovereignly placing us here, Father, where we can be truly free. We thank you for men and women that serve in our law enforcement, our fire, our EMS. We thank you for the men and women that teach our young people in our schools. But most of all, Father, we thank you for eternal grace, for eternal liberty that comes through your mercy and grace. We just come here tonight, even in doing the business of this county, to give you praise, to give you honor, and to give you glory. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen. Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, next we'll go to our ethics and conflicts disclosure. Mr. Vogler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 168-86 and the Davie County Board of County Commissioners Code of Ethics adopted December the 2nd, 2019, I'd ask each of you, before you adopt the agenda, if there's any actual, potential, or perceived conflicts of interest with respect to any matter on the proposed agenda which come before the board for a vote today. If so, please speak up and let me know so that before the agenda is adopted. Mr. Chair, seeing no one speak up, I conclude there's no actual, potential, or perceived conflicts of interest by any board member.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next we'll look to adopt the agenda. I believe we have two changes. Mr. Barnett.
Mr. Chair, we'll need to add an item for new business. We had some correspondence come in for some potential litigation that is asking for the county's decision if we want to join. So we can add that to new business.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion that we would also move the Advanced Fire Department lease to new business so that we can discuss the counter lease that was sent to us.
Okay. Anything else? All right, so we moved, we got litigation on
Opioids.
the opioid crisis, yeah, and we got the Advanced Fire Department lease. Anything else? Have a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
So moved.
A motion to have a second.
Second.
All in favor? Okay. All right, next we'll move to public comment period. Mr. Vogler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, we have, members of the board, we have 9 people who signed up. Out of those 9 that signed up, it looks like that 5 of those 9 wanted to comment on the rezoning of the Cana Road 601 lands. I will tell you now that if you talk about that during public comment about it during public comment, you have 3 minutes in which to discuss that matter, and I will be timing you. You also have the right, instead of doing that, if you want to do that during the public hearing session, in which there is not a limit on the time during that public hearing session. So as I call your name, if you'll let me know if you're going to come up and speak during the public comment section or wait and do it during the public hearing, I will know that way. Now, with regards to public comments, each person is entitled to speak for up to 3 minutes, unless you're an organized group. If you're a group, then you have the right to speak for 5 minutes. However, you can't speak for 5 minutes and come back and speak for another 3 individually if you've already spoken on the same topic as a group. I am the designated timekeeper by the board on this. I will be keeping time. When you have 2 minutes left, I will hold up a card. 2 minutes. When you get down to 1 minute, I'll hold up a card. 30 seconds, I'll hold up a card. And then when it's time, you need to stop at that point in time. All comments are to be verbal. We're not allowed to play videos or recordings in the public comment section. You have the right to comment. However, you cannot engage the board and start asking questions of the board and have them in turn respond back to those questions. When you are called, you need to come up to the podium. You need to state your full name for the recording device that we have at the podium so that we can pick up on what your name is. And then at that point in time, you can start speaking. There is a 30-minute time limit on public comments that the commissioners have adopted. And so therefore, if you've got 10 people that signed up and everybody uses their full 3 minutes, then at that point in time, those 10 people would be the only ones that would be able to speak. Then anyone who had signed up then would be carried over to the next meeting at that point in time. So with that being said, we've got, looks like Andrew Austin, rezoning Cana Road. Public comment. Emily Austin, Cana Road.
Same thing.
Okay. Next we have Todd Naylor, and that's on fire funding.
Thank you, Mr. Council. Chairman, Commissioners, County Manager. Just like to remind you, I know tonight you have on the agenda talking about the funding distribution for the $492,000, and we spoke last time about that, and I think y'all had 4 scenarios, and I submitted another scenario this past week. Hope you were able to take a look at that. And it looks like a pretty equal distribution. If we use the numbers in that scenario, basically you would take $11,000 out of that money and give to each of the big 3 departments. And if you combine that with the $35,860 they're already getting, that would leave the rest of us getting an increase of about $46,000 roughly. So everybody would be getting within a few $100s the same amount of an increase. That seems like a pretty fair trade to me. I don't know about you guys, but hope you'll consider that, because we're not sure when the next increase that we'll get will come along. I appreciate the work that you've done to get us where we are, but we still are not quite there yet. We're working toward the goal, and I appreciate your consideration for that.
Chair, next we have Sherry Crisco, 911 EMS.
My name is Sherry Crisco. I'm a business owner and resident of this county, and I'm also a former 911 telecommunicator for Davie County. I'm here this evening to express my concerns with necessary departments in this county. With all the negative press with our emergency services, the amount of experienced paramedics that have retired and or left in the last year alone is astronomical. In less than 90 days, there were 3 paramedics that retired for various reasons, and with that, you had over 100 years' experience that left this county. As a citizen, I do not feel confident if I were to have an emergency at my business or my home. And honestly, I don't know if I would call 911 if I did have one. which leads to my next point. 911 communications. They terminated all of the part-time employees, and some shifts are working short and have been for months. They, of course, are having to work a lot of overtime to cover shifts that if they had part-time employees, they would not have to be overworked. Overworking a telecommunicator that already has a high risk of burnout, PTSD, etc., is a liability in itself, especially when you work 12-hour shifts. I left because they would not accommodate my medical need for needing a different shift, and I had a letter from my neurologist. Recently, a 20-year veteran of that center left and took what I'm sure is a pretty substantial pay cut to go to a different department in this county because it's so bad there. I don't know why that didn't send up some red flags. The center lacks leadership and accountability. I also understand that the center acquired EPD and EFD programs, and with all due respect, this county is not big enough for either one of those, and it can delay response times. I have extensive knowledge in both of those, and it will delay the response. It does help keep the liability off the 911 center. However, if your TCs are trained properly, that shouldn't be an issue. There's a lot more concerns that I have, but there's no way that I can discuss everything in the 3 minutes that have been provided. Thank you all for listening, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, and I would discuss them privately.
Next, Jake Cornelius, rezoning.
Jerry Cornelison, or Jake. I live at 707 Angel Road. Lived there for almost 73 years. Grew up on a dairy farm, now selling beef cows. And I want to talk to you a little bit, and I'm not very good at this, so you'll have to bear with me. But some things need to be said, and I'd like to say what I think. I know you don't really care what I have to say, and what I say will not change your mind about what you're planning. At one time, we had a quiet and safe community. We had very little traffic, and we all knew each other. Things have changed. We no longer have safe communities, even though the sheriff's department is doing the best it can with the budget he has and staff. The quiet communities are gone. Traffic is completely out of control. The industrial park will bring in more people, more crime, more traffic. More housing will be needed. Of course, you've already got that in hand by the Country Lane project, the Imes Church Road project, and several 158 projects, and probably more that's not come up yet. Next on the agenda will be another high school. Government services will have to increase to serve the number of businessmen and people coming into the county. The current roads will not be able to handle the increased traffic. This leads to more road construction and many delays. Taxes will increase to pay off additional services, staffing, schools, and special programs. I just want you to know when is enough. After a handful of people in the county make their millions, or will be it after every tree in the county will be cut down. After this, will that handful of people pack up and move because this will not be a good place to live, and they leave all of us who love this county to deal with the destruction to our way of life? Thank you. And
Next, I have down Jason Keaton, William R. Davie Group.
Good evening. Thank each and every one of you for allowing me to speak again. As I spoke on last month's meeting, wanted to reiterate some things. Hope each one of you got the emails that I provided to you earlier on this month. Hope you've had a long time to study those and see what those look like. Thinking those, I've proved that over the last 10 years, these bigger 3 departments have come with an average of a $25,000 a year growth, while the other 9 departments, 10 departments, if you include the rescue squad, have stayed dormant at that $135,000 until last year, whenever you guys found some $900-some thousand left over. Within that $900,000, I've studied long and hard about this, and I think this is the best compromise that I can come up with. That $900,000, you, the Board of Commissioners, pushed it back to the fire chiefs to decide how we wanted to split that money. We came up with splitting it, giving the bigger 3 departments $35,000, and the lesser 10 splitting the rest of it equally across the board. That was a unanimous decision that was approved by all fire chiefs. Not a one of them declined against that. So with this $492,000, which is roughly a half of what the $902,000 allotment that you give us last year, I would propose in doing the same thing, splitting that to $17,500 for the 3 bigger departments, and floating the rest of 10 to split it equal between those 10s. I think that's the most economical and the best thing to do to possibly make the group as a whole together more, I guess you would say, more pleased with everyone that they could come up with if we went that route. Now, my next question is, the funding we have now is broken. It's absolutely broken. We get this raise, where's our next raise going to come from? You guys can't answer that unless you guys find leftover money that you want to distribute back to the fire departments, or we raise taxes. Those are the only 2 funds that these lower 10 departments are going to get. Period. There's no plannings in there to say that, hey, we've got you another $100,000 coming in next year, 5 years down the road, where are we going to be setting at? What do we come up with tonight? That's where these lower 10 departments are going to be setting, while these big 3 departments continue to grow by $25,000 a year. $25,000 while we sit dormant. We sit dormant for 15 years. That was way too long. A lot of the departments sat dormant within operating off that $135,000 to where if we didn't get that raise last year, they were within a year or 2 of closing their doors. That's facts. You can ask these fire chiefs that, whether they want to admit it or not. A lot of them had less than $50,000 in all their savings combined. Davie was one of them. We had $73,000 in all our CDs, everything combined. That's not enough to run an operation for a fire department. So, again, I've thought long and hard. I wish that you guys, my personal wish, is to give this money between the lower 8 departments that only get $212,000 period. You got 2 other departments that get an additional $125,000 from another county. But these 3 large departments are $500,000 plus, with one getting $250,000 from the city. How can I provide the same services these departments do? So to end on a fair note, I think that's the fairest thing across the board to do, was to give these 3 departments the $17,500 and to split the rest equally between the rest of the 10, which is basically the same thing we did as the fire chiefs amongst ourselves. Now, with that being said, the next move is you guys have got to come up with a plan. You can't leave it here tonight and sweep it under the rug and forget about it for 2 or 3 years. You got to come up with a plan to start raising funds better for these fire departments. Whether it means raising taxes, or you guys figure out a way that, hey, I can guarantee you we're going to get you $30,000 more a year some way. The $250,000 was quoted out in 2020. In that, does it take anywhere into consideration for capital needs? You guys know, as you ride by my fire station, I've asked you guys more than one time to come up. I'm in need of a new fire station now. But within this annexation stuff that carries on, I'm not sure where we need to put it at. That's something we all as a group needs to come up with and decide. Thank you for your time.
Chair, next we have Stephen Carell. That's on the Cana 601 rezoning. I don't know if he wants to come up now or wait.
Doing? I'm Stephen Carell. I'm not good with my words, so bear with me. I've lived at 215 Cana Road, so this project is going to be in my front yard. I'm happy where I live. I love my country home. I do not want to walk out my doorstep and see industrial. Since I've lived there, Cana Road has been paved at least 3 times, if not 4. The last time was crap. I mean, it was just basically rock with a little bit of tar. This time they done a great job, but if you go look at 601, it's already cracking from the big trucks. And if you put an industrial there, you can hang Cana Road up. It's going to fall to pieces. It can't take these big trucks because you've already got the sawmill running up and down, and we can't handle traffic on that road. It's already all hours of the night. People's flying up and down it because you can get from one side of the county to the other. We don't need industrial there. And my question is, who's going to work at this place? Everywhere I worked, you can't hire people. I work at a place now, and we're paying people very good money, and you can't get people to come to work. So you're going to build industries? Who's going to work in them? Because it ain't nobody in Davie County going to go to work in them. We already got our law enforcement strapped, our fire departments is strapped, and now you're going to bring in something that you're going to have to cover. So now the county's going to pay to fix the roads, and then the city's going to annex it. How's that make the county look? It's not going to do the county any good, is it? So you're going to spend all this money to fix up something that they're not even going to get tax money off of. I can promise you my fire department won't see a dime of that money. It's just something I don't think we need. We've got there's plenty of industries in this county. There's open factories all over Moxville. Why can't somebody open those up? I mean, I think this is not a necessity. We love our small community. We love it the way it is. Please take that in consideration and don't change that. I like the fact my kids can go out in the yard and play. They're not going to be able to do that if you put industry up there, because I'm going to have to worry about trucks running up and down the road. If they have a third shift, I'm going to have to worry about night shift coming in and out. I don't want that. I don't want the crime, which personally I'm not too worried about that because I can't handle it on my own. But I don't want that. I don't want this stuff in my neighborhood. Thank y'all for letting me speak my opinion. Even if it doesn't change anything, at least I can say what I said. Thank y'all.
Next is Jeremy Keaton, rezoning Cana Road.
Good evening, citizens of Davie County and board. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. As a lifelong citizen of Davie County, I would like to point out a few things with this rezoning request that I do not feel align with the Davie County Growth Enhancement Strategy. Policy 1.1 states that industry and business should diversify the local economy. Does this diversify the local economy? I would argue it does not. A quick Google search would yield at least 12 large industrial warehouse-type metal buildings within 2 miles. Most of those are within South Point, which is less than a mile away. So I would say it does not diversify. Also in Policy 1.1, it said we should encourage businesses which are good community neighbors. Absolutely, we should. We want good neighbors. We all want good neighbors like these folks. That's a objective term. But I would let you decide, since we have a long history with Blackwelder owning a industrial property on this corner. I would ask you if you feel like this is a well-maintained property that you like to drive by every day, and it has been in a similar state for at least 2 decades. Also, Policy 3.2 in the enhancement strategy states that industrial development will be on land that is physically suitable and has unique location advantages for industry. Does it have unique location advantages? Absolutely. Great location. On 601 near 40. We'll check that box. Is it physically suitable for industrial development? Now, this is going to be hard to see, but this is a printed out topographic map from the Davie County website, and all these little squiggly lines represent 2 foot of elevation change. So So, and this map is, if you can't see it, it's filled with squiggly lines. And to give you an example, from Burgers and Brews down to the pond on this property, there's 50-foot of elevation change. From Cana Road down to that pond, there's 60-foot of elevation change. Now, what do we know about big warehouses? They need a big, flat spot. What about the parking lots and loading areas that go with them? They need a big, flat spot. Is this a proper place for industrial development? I don't believe so. Will it change the looks and texture of this corner? Absolutely. You can't grade without demolishing all the vegetation there. So, you may ask, I've got 30 seconds, you may ask, what would I recommend to go there? Hey, what if this was a nice subdivision that flowed with the land? We could place houses that adopted to the land instead of imposed a square structure upon them. That's an idea, and that meets the current zoning, which is residential, RA, and R20. Thank you for your time, and thank you, citizens, for being here.
And then our last one is Miss Julie Whitaker on Davie mental health.
Good evening, thank y'all. I hope you're doing well this evening. I intend to be brief this evening because I'm here to remind you that nearly a year ago, as mental health advocates, we advised that if you wish to know if the LMEMCO is serving you well, then you need to ask the citizens the LMEMCO is designed to serve. You asked for and received quarterly reports from the LMEMCO partners, and you have a Director of Health and Human Services to report to you. But you have no direct contact with the clients who are not connected with the Department of Health and Human Services or what I call a mental health advisory committee because one does not exist. So tonight I want to provide you with 3 examples as to what you are missing in the reports you get. A recent meeting of the Davie Community Collaborative, a subcommittee of partners, found had a report from Southern Family Medicine that there were 2 recent overdose deaths due to rainbow fentanyl. Reportedly, the persons thought they were buying benzodiazepines, a common class of drugs for anxiety. Last month, a young adult with autism began to have serious mental health issues. These issues are classified as a threat to life of self and others. It took more than a week working with the LMEMCO, working with the provider network, and actually contacting state officials to help before this young person was able to get into a hospital. The psychiatrist there on the first interview said, "This is a very ill person. It'll take us several weeks to stabilize them." That subcommittee that I spoke about before has asked several times for data from the county so that we can assess where we should put our efforts for mental health services and supports. We finally got some data. It's very long and confusing. In fact, one report is 846 pages long. So I've taken some time to comb through it. Briefly, how many minutes do I have left?
You have 45 seconds.
Thank you. 220 assaults. This is from January 1st. 220 assaults. We're maintaining that some of those are mental health issues. 7 suspicious deaths. Disturbances, 122. Domestic and juvenile accounts, 197. Domestic weapons emergencies, 25. Drug calls, 68. Harassment calls, mental health issues, 193. Mentally disturbed suicide threat or attempt, 32. Overdose or poisonings, 46. Psychiatric suicide attempts, 9. That's from the beginning of this year. We need to do something, and you need to have a way to learn these numbers and know what's going on. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Julie Hill would say, are you done? Do you need more time?
No, got to my last
Okay,
line. Thank you.
perfect. All right.
Mr. Chair, that's the last of those that have signed up.
All right, next we'll move to our presentations. We have the Davie County Veterans Appreciation Program. I'll call Ms. Kelly Funderburg.
ladies and gentlemen. Megan, you come on up here. This is Megan Palmer from Veteran Services. I am Kelly from the Register of Deeds. Welcome to you all, and thank you, Board, for letting me have just a few minutes to speak. I know we have a lot of heavy things to discuss tonight, but if you will give me just a few minutes, I'm going to have a quick presentation on a new program that we're bringing to the Register of Deeds office. It's a combination effort with Register of Deeds and Veteran Services, and it's a great program for veterans here in Davie County. So the program is called Thank a Vet, and what it is essentially is an idea where veterans come into the Register of Deeds office and they record their DD-214 forms. For those of you that don't know what a DD-214 form is, it is the most important document that a veteran receives upon their withdrawal of the military. It has dates of service listed, it has the last place that they were stationed, it has their medals and awards that they've received, and it is by far the most important piece of documentation that a veteran receives. We don't live in Jacksonville or Fort Bragg areas, so when I came into office, I started looking at all the numbers, and I realized that the Register of Deeds office in 2020, 2021, that fiscal year, there was only 2 DD-214 forms recorded the entire year. And I thought, well, that's odd. That's not very many. And then I started looking, well, in 2021 to 2022, the fiscal year, there was only 4 recorded for the entire year. And so I thought, what can I do to let veterans know that this is a free thing where they can come in and record their DD-214 forms here in our office. It allows them to be put on the permanent record, and it really helps the families in their time of need. Because Megan and I know when veterans pass away, the families are struggling and they're trying to find the paperwork. And I have had mothers, I have had daughters, I have had people calling just like Megan has, and they're crying and upset because they cannot find the DD-214 form. And just as Carl Lambert is here, and as Benita knows with the funeral home, those DD-214 forms are essential pieces of documents that then give that deceased veteran the ability to be buried with VA benefits and to have burial, the VA National Cemetery, the flags, all of the things that go along with veterans. So I started looking around. I'm very big on looking at other counties within our state to see what I can do to make Register of Deeds better for us. And I decided to look, and a lot of our adjoining counties have a program where when a veteran comes in to record their DD-214, they take their picture, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to take their picture when a veteran comes into the office. They're going to get an ID card. And Megan and I have been, y'all, for the last several months, we have been hitting the pavement door to door. We have 75 places. I've put them in your packet now. We've got 75 places on board already, whether it's a free drink from CJ's Barbecue or if it's free towing for fully permanent total disability, free towing by Farmington Wrecker Service. They're going to give free towing completely. So we have a ton of places listed. The veteran will come in, they'll get their ID card, we'll then give them this list of all the businesses that have signed up and come on board. So it's a win for the veteran because they know that the county supports them and that they have a lot of different discounts and freebies from Farmington to Sheffield to Advance to Coolamy. And then it's a win for the Register of Deeds office and for the Veterans office because we now know that we're drawing people in to record these important pieces of paper that will be kept for perpetuity so that when their family member does pass, it is safe and they can get to those records quickly, and it's free. And then it's a win for the county because it'll bring in people. You can record your DD-214. If you don't live here and you still have your DD-214, you can still record it here. As long as it's recorded, you'll be eligible for the card. And so it'll get people in to our office. We're going to have a kickoff event on November the 1st. We've worked with some other businesses, and we're going to have a breakfast for the veterans. They're going to have biscuits and muffins and juice and coffee. And so it's going to be a big thing, and we're really excited about it. So I appreciate you letting me take some time to tell you about it. If you have any questions.
November 1st.
You want to say anything?
You want to talk about Operation Greenlight?
Sure. So Operation Greenlight is where the county is encouraging citizens to light their porch, their front area of their homes green in support of veterans. That's for the whole month of November. So we've got 3 local businesses that will offer those green bulbs, Cooley Hardware, Ace Hardware in Advance, and Caudell Lumber here in Moxville. Those 3 businesses agree to have the green light bulbs. So go purchase one, light your front porch green for the whole month of November, and let's support our veterans.
Thank you.
Ladies, I just want to thank you so very much for all the work that you have put into this and for having the idea to begin with. Y'all just are doing a magnificent job. I brag on both of you all the time, so but I do. And also, when I have to work with you in my day job, you all are always, just over and above everything that you need to do. But thank you so much for doing all this. I think it's wonderful.
It's a good thing. We're excited.
Great, thank you. Next, we'll move to our public hearings. Our public hearing for the zoning map amendment 220206 Blackwater Investments LLC. Call on Mr. Vogler. Mr. Easter, I apologize. Sorry.
Thank you, Chairman Blakely. Tonight, I'm going to be presenting zoning map amendment request 2022-06 for Blackwater Investments LLC. The request is to rezone approximately 105.5 acres from residential agriculture and residential 20, RA and R20, to general industrial GI. The properties are located at 148 Cana Road and 2254 US Highway 601 North. The property has different kinds of zoning surrounding it. To the north is residential, which is R12, highway business. To the west, we do have commercial, industrial, and residential as well. As you can see, highway business, general industrial, R20. To the south, there's industrial and commercial as well, general industrial, highway business, and to the east, there is residential RA. The property was originally zoned as residential agriculture in residential 20. The proposed zoning is a general rezoning, so it is a blanket rezoning. There is no conditions associated with this. The general industrial district is established for manufacturing, distribution, warehousing, processing, and related uses whose operating characteristics limit their effect on adjacent uses. The property is currently served by public water and on-site septic systems. The properties in question are located in an area designated in industrial on the Davie County land use category map. Also as well, the property, both properties in question, are located in an area that is designed as primary growth area. These areas are categorized being located adjacent to municipal limits and regulatory areas, generally extend along major urban transportation corridors within the county. At the August 23rd Planning Board meeting, the Planning Board approved the zoning request unanimously to have this property rezoned. We do have, what I would ask this board to consider tonight is we do have 3 options, and I did put the motion language on here. The first one would consider the rezoning. The proposed zoning amendment is consistent with the Davie County Comprehensive Plan, and it spells out the request, or to deny the zoning request based upon the following, or at that time they can defer for additional considerations. And I'll be happy to field any questions that this board may have at this time.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Feaster?
I have several questions, but I honestly, I don't think they apply to what you're here for. And I'll bring those up, I guess, when we get into the public portion of this.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I'll turn it over to Mr. Vogel.
Chair has announced today that this is the day and hour of a public hearing pursuant to Chapter 160D of the General Statutes of North Carolina and Chapter 155, the Davie County Code of Ordinance, of an amendment to the zoning ordinance regarding Davie County tax parcel G376 and G377 located at 2254 US Highway 601 North, consisting of approximately 105.5 acres from residential 20 and residential agriculture to residential industrial. There's been due notice given pursuant to the requirements of the North Carolina General Statutes and Davie County Code of Ordinance by way of due publication of a notice of public hearing in a newspaper of general circulation in Davie County on September 22nd, 2022, and September 29th, 2022, as required by law. The clerk to the board has attached the affidavit showing publication in said paper. I would ask all who wish to come and comment at this public hearing to please come forward to the podium, state your full name for the board, and then comment on the proposal.
Mr. Vogler, members of the board, presenting on behalf of the applicant will be Will Dwiggins, who represents Black Welders LLC, and I will present representing LDJ Global Strategies LLC on behalf of the developer and the mover. And I would ask that Will go first.
What says the board?
That's
Good evening. My name is Will Dwiggins, and I represent the current owner and the applicant for the rezoning request. My family has owned the property for over 60 years. My grandfather acquired the land in the mid-1950s because he wanted to move his family from town on Yadkinville Road out into the country. At that time, there was very little around. Only about 3 homes were already built on adjacent property along Cana Road, and I-40 was still under construction. The first thing that my grandfather did with the property was build a manufacturing facility in 1956 at the corner of Cana Road and Highway 601. From then until the mid-1990s, scores of people worked at that factory, as many as 100 at any given time, and many of those folks built homes along Cana Road, with 6 new homes, including my grandfather's, built on adjacent land over the next 5 years. Another 5 would be built along Cana Road, adjacent to the subject property, prior to the factory's closing. So there is, in fact, a history of industrial usage on this property that predates the majority of surrounding development. Over the years, growth slowly crept up Highway 601 from Moxville, spurred on initially by the completion of I-40 and an abundance of available land. Christie Trucking built their corporate headquarters and trucking terminal catty-corner to our property on Highway 601 in the mid-'80s. My wife and I made Cana Road our home from around 1998 to 2006. This was the same time when the South Point Industrial Park was constructed on Highway 601, about 1,600 feet south of our property line. They've since completed Phase 1 and Phase 2 and are now expanding to Phase 3, bringing new industries and creating hundreds of jobs for people in Davie County with minimal disruption to surrounding property owners. For the past 20 years, development north of I-40 along Highway 601 has accelerated. In 2019, the Davie County Comprehensive Plan was adopted to establish a vision for future growth and development for Davie County. The growth strategy map found on page 71 of the comprehensive plan identifies our property as being located in the primary growth area, while recognizing that development will require investment in partnership with municipalities and private developers to provide utility infrastructure that supports development consistent with the comprehensive plan. The future land use map found on page 75 of the comprehensive plan identifies our property as industrial use for the purpose of, and I'm quoting from page 76, protecting important properties from encroachment by non-industrial land uses. 4 generations of my family have lived on this land, and it is our goal to position the property in a way that is consistent with the county's land use plan and in a way that will benefit the majority of Davie County residents. We believe that the timing is ideal, that the rezoning of the property to general industrial for the future development of warehouse distribution or light manufacturing operations is consistent with the county's plan, and that LDJ Global is precisely the quality of private developer that will prove to be a strong partner to the county. Thank you for your time.
Can I ask Will a question? Quick question.
Sure.
You, once we rezone, and once the town of Monksville annexes, if that is, I believe that is what it is said going to be, control will you have over what goes on that property and how it's aligned on that property and what it looks like in terms of how it relates to the community?
Sure, I only represent the seller, so I have no control over that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'm happy to defer till the end and let the other folks who've lined up go before I go.
Hello, my name is Andrew Austin. I'm a local business owner, but more importantly, I'm a resident of Cana Road. I've only ever been to one of these meetings. However, tonight I'm here to speak, not something I normally do. My wife and I purchased our home late last year with the hopes of starting our lives together in a quiet rural setting. Cana Road seemed to be the ideal place, with farms and houses from one end to the other. But now the Cana Road community is threatened. We're threatened by over 105 acres being rezoned as general industrial, and as you've heard, they have no control on what happens to the property once it's rezoned. The quiet road, which finally got repaved after being ravaged by commercial traffic, stands to be ravaged again. I've lived in Davie County all but about 4 years of my life. This is my home. But the county is changing. Progress brings change, but that's not always a good thing. I'd like to remind everyone of a similar situation, an industrial area situated in the midst of a rural area. The Ashley Furniture Complex on Baltimore Road. Anyone who's worked at Ashley, like me, or lived on or near Baltimore Road can attest to the traffic, the accidents, the headache that it's become. Is that what we want Cana Road to become? Friday afternoon, I took the time to talk to many of the residents, my neighbors, whose houses face or border this massive tract. You've already heard from one of them this evening. Some were unaware, others were angry and frustrated. The small sign that was put on the corner of Cana and 601 implied that the rezoning was only for the 3.55 acres, which it is not. Some people were afraid of what it would bring to their front porches. Light pollution, noise pollution, traffic, not to mention the potential for environmental pollution. One man I talked with told me he would not have bought his house if there was a factory or industrial park across the road. Some residents were concerned about what would happen to property values. Would the specter of eminent domain come into play? Other residents expressed concern that perhaps tax dollars were the motive behind this, including the possible annexation by the town. Industrial sprawl is not something I thought I'd have to worry about in Davie County, but here we are. Johnny Easter, Director of Planning and Zoning, told me by phone late last week that the county had no plans for development by the owner, and the zoning was simply preemptive. He also told me there was a history of industrial activity on the property. On the 3.55 acres, that is true. But unless you consider horse farming and hay mowing to be industrial activity, there is no precedent for industrial activity on 96% of the land that's being considered to be rezoned. In preparation for this meeting, I discovered that a plan had been put forth for an industrial park. Between the sign on the single small tract and the potential misdirect by Mr. Easter, I find myself misled. My opinions are my own, and I don't pretend to speak for anyone else. But not one person I took the time to speak to had anything remotely positive to say about this. I ask that the board unanimously reject this zoning request in the interest of the community and the interest of maintaining the rural setting this community is known for. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Emily Austin, and a little bit over a year ago, I, along with my husband, bought a house on 13 acres on Cana Road and made it our home. We picked it for many reasons, but most importantly because it was rural, quiet, and safe. The things we wanted in the place we chose to start a family. Things I firmly believe that the zoning change would alter if it was approved. I love driving down Cana Road and seeing ducks, goats, and other animals in front of homes. I love the characteristics that define the residential agriculture classifications, homes mixed in with ag use. These two parcels have approximately 2,450 feet, nearly half a mile of road frontage on Cana Road, nearly 30% more than what it has on Highway 601. This will undoubtedly alter the state of things on Cana, no matter what the building setback or the buffer is. With this will come additional traffic on Cana Road, noise and light pollution, and likely, in the years to come, additional industrial expansion down Cana Road and the possibility for annexation. Along with this, the potential impacts to our property values. Naturally, with industrial use comes hazardous materials. You may or may not recall the major hazmat incident in Winston-Salem earlier this year at the Weaver Fertilizer Plant. I worked that emergency response and dealt firsthand with the consequences and impacts of people displaced from their homes and the concerns about personal environmental safety. There is always inherent danger in mixing industrial uses along with residential. And once you mix the two, you can take actions to mitigate it, but never completely remove it. I do not want anything industrial or manufacturing within a mile of my home due to these concerns about hazardous materials. The applicable North Carolina General Statutes state that the local government shall post a notice of the hearing on the proposed site, and that when multiple parcels are included, a posting on each individual parcel is not required, but the local government shall post sufficient notices to provide reasonable notice. The notice was posted on the corner of Cana and 601. While that placement may have met the letter of the law, I do not believe it met the intent. I think many people mistakenly believe this hearing was for the small parcel on the corner and not for the parcel with the home in over 100 acres on Cana Road. I know this because that is what I assumed until I took a deeper dive. The law requires you to consider if the reclassification is consistent with the overall character of the existing development in the immediate vicinity of the property. Given this property's frontage on Cana and the overwhelming majority of parcels immediately around the site zoned RA and R12, the reasonable answer to this is no. Additionally, the law states consider all possible uses in a rezoning request and not just what the applicant says. While some of the potential uses may better align with others, there are other uses under the general industrial district that would in no way align with the current character of the area. For the applicable zoning ordinances, indoor amusement park, broadcast studio, professional offices, research labs, and a landfill, just to name a few. None of those things align or are compatible with the surrounding structures and uses. Keep Cana Road rural and residential, and please deny this zoning request. Thank you.
I'm Jimmy Foster. I live off Highway 601, 240 Chance Lane, and my property joins the property that you're speaking of now. And I've had problems throughout the years with drainage runoff on my property. In fact, right now, since this little bit of rain come through, I've got plenty more stuff that's washed into my lake. I've had to have environmental people out there several times to check, and we found ditches full of remnants from old fabric that every time a big gully washer comes, the fabrics end up in the lake. Had fish kills. We've had on the property, the dams broke on the lake that's now there. And there's toilets thrown in the drainage coming off. It's been like a trash dump. And every time the least little rain comes, there's always something. And on the land is like this guy said here, it's like 50 feet. The lake is 50 feet above the ground level, like Cana Road. And every bit of the runoff that comes off anywhere comes to my lake. There's no creeks, no nothing but springs. the only water on that property is springs, and everybody around it feeds from those springs. And so, for instance, a guy behind me put in a well, and when he put the well in, I had a spring to go dry. So I know that it's feeding all of the water to all of the people within a good 3-mile radius. And the nearest creek is the Yagan River up on close to beyond States, up on Statesville, or 64 going to Statesville. I just want to let you know that everything's downhill from the highway to my driveway. So, thank you for letting me speak.
Jason Keaton, again, Fire Chief of Wilmar Davie. I spoke with you guys at great length on this process last month. Since that, within the last 3 days afterward, I received a letter from their representative and Mr. Hank Van Hoy. I believe, Terry, you were tagged in it as well. I passed that back along to you guys. Now, what I'm up here asking tonight is they've entertained a meeting with the Wilmar Davie Fire Department. I've spoke with our legal advisor on that, and he's willing to meet with the city as well and with this group. I'm not sure what they have planned there, but I would like to ask for help and assistance from possibly one or two of you, the county commissioners and the county attorney, if you want to sit into this, to possibly learn things, help you guys learn things within the annexation policy and anything, questions that you might have. But I want to make sure that we are legally covered before we go into that meeting. So yeah, I'm inviting you guys to attend that meeting if you choose to. But in the end, I am asking for help or representation from the county if you choose to do so within the meeting for this before I move forward. I have my numbers and everything that they have asked of me I've had them compiled and put together. So not sure that you guys got that email, but we are ready to move forward and meet with the city on this on behalf of Wilmar Davie Fire Department. So thank you.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, Mr. Manager, welcome to the county. Mr. Vogler, Ms. Moyer. I'll be very quick. Every time I go to these zoning hearings, it's always the same thing. The neighbors oppose a change, and that's understandable, and I respect their view. But that's not the issue before you. The issue before you is whether or not you're going to follow your land use plans. The land use plans are the guideline, your Bible, so to speak, that you're supposed to follow, that you've developed carefully over time. This land use plan in 2010 showed this property in the growth enhancement area as industrial. Your land use plan for your farmland preservation plan had this property listed as in your growth enhancement area as industrial. Your 2019 Davie Comprehensive Plan, a plan that was to carry forward till 2045, if I remember correct, shows this property, the whole 100 acres, in your growth enhancement area for industrial use. Now, when you put these plans together, you and your predecessors, you didn't just write it up. You did it carefully. You did it with study. You did it with committees that looked at the properties and determined what the best and highest use for those properties were. You did it with notice to the public, and you did it with many hearings over time. And when you do those things, then they're set out as a plan that you suggest that you would follow, that all of the neighbors can look at and know what the plan is. This is not a surprise. This has been the use for this property for 12 years, and it was the use of the property prior to the time that zoning was adopted in Davie County in 1971 or 2. I appreciate the fact that some of my good friends are opposed to this change, but change happens. You know, it's odd that Moxville had a zoning hearing recently in which the effort was to rezone for an R20 type residential development beside another residential development. And there the neighbors opposed it because they didn't want all the traffic that comes from a residential development. And what the newspaper reported, that the neighbors were saying, we would rather have an industrial development than this. What folks don't understand, but you do, about your ordinance, when you suggest the setbacks and the protections in your ordinance that are designed to protect a residential neighborhood and an industrial neighborhood where they abut each other, you did that with careful, thoughtful consideration that those setbacks and those requirements in your zoning ordinance would protect both development. Now, Will is right in this case. Residential moved to the industrial property, not the other way around. If you moved here last year, you could have looked at the zoning ordinance and your growth enhancement plan, and you could have seen that the plan that you adopted in 2010 showed this property to be industrial. You have a letter from Terry Brawley about economic development. And one of the things that he talks about in that letter is whether or not prospects can count on the regulatory boards to follow through on what they say in their zoning ordinance are the plans that they put out for public consumption, both for the neighbors who live here, those who may come, and what development might be, and owners of property like Will, who might be able to sell it for. We ask you simply to follow your plan and to do what you have said that you would do as your growth direction plan, and designate this property, rezone it industrial, as your plan has said since 2010 for this specific tract of land. I don't think I need to take the time, though I can, to go through the specific pages in your ordinance. Will gave you the ones in the most recent one that say that. People talk briefly about water runoff and light pollution and all those things. Any development, Mark, to your questions, that happens on any piece of property is regulated by many governmental bodies. The zoning is yours, the setbacks and all of that are yours, but the traffic's DOT, and where the permits are and how those traffic entrances are designed and what all they'll make a developer do, and the cost for that, that's DOT and the developer, not the taxpayers that have to do that. The developer has to pay for that. With regard to water issues, you have to meet DEQ's standards for those protections, or you can't get your building permits for it. So, property values, that always comes up. If you wish, we've had Bob Anderson here, who is a realtor, look at the property values of the residential developments beside South Point. Because when South Point was rezoned, people said it'll hurt our property values. That's not what happens. The tax rates have not diminished on any of those properties according to Bob's analysis, and you know from experience that a rising ability sometimes causes property values to go up, which may result in a higher tax to pay because your property value increased. But I don't think anybody wants their investment to go down in value. So just quite simply, on behalf of the prospective buyer, we would ask you to do what you said you would do in your ordinance. Follow your ordinance, and please pass the application to rezone. And LDJ people are here, Will is here, Bob is here if you have questions of them. Thank you very much.
Anybody else?
Seeing no one else come forward, Mr. Chair, I would ask that you close the public hearing at this time. so that you may discuss what, if any, action you wish to take with regards to this matter.
Thank you. All right, any discussion?
I have just a few questions, Mr. Chairman. Do we have a development plan? Do we have a plan for, in terms of what's going to create traffic on Cana Road versus outlets on 601? Do we have anything like that? I mean, we've gotten very specific about what we're doing here. This isn't a vague, and you know, I want to say this, first of all, I respect Terry. I sit on the EDC board, and no one supports progress and growth more than I do, but I can tell you there's some, you know, I have some questions here. Do we have anything?
If you would like to see, our engineer can show you conceptual drawings of what.
Will there be access roads on Cana Road? Or what's the road frontage on 601 versus Cana Road? Will all the traffic be run out to 601 versus?
He can show you, Eddie, if you would, what we proposed, our managers in general use. So that's why we didn't go into
I know, but
These are concept plans and they may change, but. Sorry, they're so large.
that's okay. Well, tell me where the access points will be.
Cana Road, 601, Imes Church Road here. We've met with NCDOT and their suggestion was to make sure we align with Imes Church Road here. We have a single entrance here as far away from the intersection as we can get on Cana Road. And then another potential entrance off of 601 here. We have two different kinds of concept plans, one that shows 3 buildings, one that shows 4. But basically, the road, one option shows a second second entrance onto Cana Road here, and that one is pretty similar to the other option. And then
So a second access point on Cana Road?
yeah, potentially. I mean,
Yeah. Okay.
this is all conceptual.
Well, you know, thank you. I really appreciate that. I certainly understand the neighbors' concerns about the traffic on Cana Road. Now, I'm telling you, until they repaved this thing here a week or two ago, a month or two ago, it was like a sawmill path coming up to 601 there. And so I get that. I get their concerns there. And part of the problem here is you're asking us to rezone this, as I see it, and, you know, we're just kind of rolling the dice in terms of what we're going to get, though the developers are very high-quality people. They're outstanding folks. I don't have any issues with that. I have talked to Terry about some of the things that have come up in regards to the neighbors. I mean, we have residential on one side of Cana Road, we have this property on the other side of Cana Road. Where does the issue of rezoning and annexing stop? It's a concern for folks out in that community. Honestly, it's a concern for folks all over the county as we begin to spread out. So one of the questions I have there is, is the town of Moxville, once we rezone this, are they going to annex this property?
That would be a question for the town of Moxville.
Okay.
And my understanding is, at this point in time, there's not an application that's been filed for annexation yet.
Okay. All right.
If I may approach.
Please, absolutely, please.
Comprehensive plan on page 75, which shows where the purple area stops, which was with our property by your plan, and where, excuse me.
No, that's
and
okay.
where then other zoning classifications start. That's your plan from 2017.
The issue of the fire district, and I guess this relates to annexation. We're hearing multiple things being discussed. I have heard from the word go that this property is going to be annexed. And I know that may not be relevant to what we're talking about, but it is relevant to the fire safety for that piece of property. The William R. Davie Fire Department's 2.6 miles from that piece of property. The Moxville Fire Department's 5 miles from that piece of property. If that property then is annexed, this is a question I have asked. I've asked Brian tonight, and I will ask it again. Do we have as a Board of Commissioners, are we able to select the fire district even if that property is annexed? Can the Board of Commissioners make a decision to keep that piece of property and the safety of that piece of property covered by the William R. Davie Fire District versus the Moxville Fire? And nothing against Moxville, obviously, but it's 2.5 versus 5. Straight up 601. And so, do we have that option?
And under General Statute 153A 233, the county may designate fire districts or parts of existing districts and prescribe the boundaries thereof for insurance grading purposes. All we've got at this point in time are fire districts for insurance grading purposes. We don't have them for fire protection or other types of districts. Ours are all insurance grading purposes, so the county has that authority to continue to designate areas for insurance grading purposes. And now, once that's designated, then you've got, the way we've done it is we designated an area where there's already a fire department within those areas. We haven't designated any areas across the county that does not have a fire department in it at this point in time. Now, the statutes also provide, the municipal statutes also provide that anytime a piece of property is annexed into a municipality, that if those services, if certain services are already offered by the municipality, they have to offer those services to that area that's been annexed into it. So you've got a catch-22 situation here. You have the right to designate the areas. The town also has an obligation to service those areas. So you may have 2 fire departments servicing those areas at the same time.
And then our fire ordinance states that county commissioners have to approve any fire district changes, which
That's correct.
we really have not been doing. We've not really been exercising that.
But our ordinance does require that.
May I approach and retrieve my...
Oh, absolutely. Thank you.
And if I can help you about the annexation issue. The annexation issue only presents itself because you cannot get city sewer unless you're annexed. And so we are forced to do that to get city sewer. However, there are opportunities that I've expressed to Jason Keaton and to others, Ed and Ken Gamble and Al Benshaw, the town attorney, that perhaps there are mutual agreements that you all can enter into that deal with that issue, just like out at Farmington Road, that my people are not concerned at all about wanting to harm the fire department. They do not. Anything that we can do to cooperate with the fire department and yet receive fire protection that will protect adequately an industry or an industrial complex, we're fine with. And so anything that can be worked out is, in that respect, okay with us. The annexation issue only arises because of the present need to get sewer. If that can be gotten some other way, through mutual agreement or otherwise, that's fine with us. I mean, We prefer not have to pay town taxes. We can avoid it.
Interesting. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I have a question for the petitioner, or I guess Mr. Vanoy, or maybe the engineer. The egress onto 601, aligning that with Iams Church Road, are you anticipating a signal on that? Just trying to, I mean, I hear the concern about Cana Road, and that's in minimizing the traffic on that. That's a valid point. And I guess on the site plan is I know you've got two different iterations of that, but is the one with the one entrance, is that just for safety to have a second way in? And I know we're talking about conceptual plans here, but
We currently have a study, a traffic study being done. It's not complete yet. The DOT will be the final judge on whether or not there's a signal required.
Mr. Chair, I hate to interrupt, but my understanding is that none of this is being picked up from out there. They need to come up to the podium to answer that, so that we have the recording of that. If you could come forward. I hated to interrupt you, but apparently I just got a note passed to me that it was not being recorded.
I'm Eddie McEldowney with Davis Martin Powell and Associates at 6415 Old Plank Road in High Point, North Carolina. Yes, the question was, the second entrance on 601 was to provide another way out for one of the potential development out parcels along 601. NCDOT would require the traffic study to do the signal warrant study, and that's what is currently in process now by LDJ Global. So they'll be the final arbiter of whether that would be permitted or not after that study is completed.
Okay, but my question about the second entrance was on Cana Road. You've got two plans. One's got two entrances on Cana, one's got one. Is that just for safety purposes or what?
That was just a conceptual plan to allow a development of two separate out parcels along that portion of the property.
Further questions?
And I know the board members that have asked questions have all said conceptual plans, but let's remember that this is a general zoning request, not a special use zoning request. So you need to look at what possibilities you might could have there.
Well, Mr. Attorney, that makes it even more concerning.
But I just didn't want you focusing just on what these conceptual plans were. Your obligation is to look at it overall, make your decision based upon whether it promotes the general health, general welfare, safety, consistent with all applicable plans, reasonable in public interest, and if it furthers the goals, objectives, and actions and policies of the comprehensive plan, growth enhancement strategy plan, and so forth of the county. And now, overall, as a general industry, not just what this might be.
But that said, just to be clear, if this went forward, there would be, a site plan would come back, assuming Moxville didn't annex it, for sake of conversation, a plan would come back to this board for approval or come to planning.
Yes.
Please, yeah.
If this maintains and stays in Davie County, this property is subject to a technical review committee prior to any approval of anything out there. So at that time, all entities will be notified, and we will have a meeting with the prospective developer, a representative from DOT, DEQ, all the address. We sit down, have a discussion about it. All the proposals are set forth then. okay, prior to anything out there. They have to have final approval from the technical review committee prior to any of the permitting taking place. That holds true for Davie County as well as Moxville, as well as Bermuda Run. All the municipalities associated in that for all commercial properties are subject to a technical review committee. So at that time, any of those issues, fire marshal has a representative, I'll have a representative there, DEQ, DOT will have a representative. At that time, they will address any issues associated with access on Cana Road, or that those are brought back to the developer. The developer sends the final approval through our office, and they will approve the whole plan, the development conceptually, and then they start the permitting process from there.
But if the town of Moxville annexes it, that does not occur.
It still does.
It still does.
Yes, sir. Under Moxville, it's spelled under Moxville's zoning as a technical review committee, and I would at that time work with the same entities associated with the town of Moxville and addressing the same issue.
But their zoning requirements come into play versus.
Yeah, but anything associated with the DOT requirements, the EQ requirements, any of the big entities, the fire marshal's office would all be addressed at that. The same for Davie County as well as the town of Moxville.
And Mr. Van Hoy has brought up a point about having a discussion about the issue of sewer. It seems like that's the primary issue here, is how do we get sewer to that property in a cost-effective way. Has that discussion occurred at all? See, I will tell you that other than the EDC, which we don't get deep into the weeds, Terry, here, I've had no discussion with anybody about this, and that's kind of unfortunate. But if there has been that discussion, then
We've had that discussion. You want to talk to them about that? Sure. We met with the town of Moxville, and we have a conceptual plan to serve that property, and we have developed cost estimates for LDJ to accomplish that, and also to improve the water capacity out there as well, which would benefit the folks that live along that road, not just LDJ, because that water line would be upsized from what it is currently to at least a 12. Right now, I think it's a 6 or an 8, maybe. So it would be upsized. So that's something that would occur at the cost of the developer.
Any further questions?
I do have one, if you don't mind. The conceptual plan that you have, does that have the road from 601 connecting to the one that comes in off of Cana Road?
Through a network of roads within the industrial development, it does connect at Imes Church Road and then goes into the site and then connects up to Cana Road.
My concern there was anytime that you have one way in and one way out, if there's some kind of accident or whatever in there, you really need a second way out.
Yes.
And I would hope that would be considered in your design of the place, if it passes.
And that's already quite a little busy area. I think it's hard to get in and out of Cana Road and Imes Church Road in that area already because of the traffic and the line of sight.
Any further questions?
Mr. Director, would I be able to make one statement concerning the DOT plan?
He's coming up. And if you would state your name again so that she would have it on the record.
Yes, sir, absolutely. My name is Jeremy Keaton, resident of Main Church Road, and I would just ask that the board keep in mind the DOT's plan of improvements of 601, which, if I recall, is a 4-lane divided median, which would impede left turns onto 601. Therefore, those left turns would come from Cana Road. Perhaps Mr. McEldowney has evidence to the contrary, but that is my understanding. Thank you for letting me talk about
That is, I mean, that's a good point. I think we heard about that last month. Please.
That's why DOT is aligning the roads at Imes Church Road, so you won't be restricted there. That would be a full access road.
Any further questions or discussion? If anyone wants to take action, further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion to defer to the November meeting. I just feel like we have questions that haven't been answered here. In regards to the fire district, just in, and I understand this is general use, but this project has gotten very specific in terms of the use of the property, how many buildings are going on the property, and again, I know this. In general, I support the plan, but there's just a few questions that I think still need to be answered.
Okay. So I have a motion to defer.
I would second that.
Okay. I have a motion and a second to defer until the next meeting, November the 7th. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I would ask a question of our attorney. If we defer it to November, would we be back in the public hearing process, or would it just be old business?
Now, the public hearing now at this point in time has been closed, so therefore, or I guess you're going to close it tonight. It's not actually been closed yet. You're still asking questions of individuals, but.
All right, well, so we have a motion to defer and a second to defer.
So have you closed the public hearing?
We're going to close it right now.
Okay.
Yep.
I have a discussion. The gentleman in the second row behind Mr. Vanoy, you mentioned there was a traffic study being commissioned. When do you anticipate the results of that?
October 25th.
Okay.
Okay. Again, we have a motion and a second to defer. I'll call on the vote. All in favor to defer? We'll defer. Okay. I'd like to see that traffic study come out. Next, we'll move to consent agenda. Do you have any discussions, or I'll look for a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve consent agenda.
I have a motion to approve consent agenda. Do I have a second? Second. All right, motion second. All in favor? 5-0. Okay. All right. Next, we'll move to old business.
Chair, without disrupting you, may we exit?
Again, next, we'll go to old business. I think the first thing, we have the fire funding allocation.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I've asked Ms. West to come back and to pick up where we left off at our meeting in September. In our last meeting, we had proposed 3 different methods for dividing up the $492,000 that was part of this year's budget. And whenever you're ready, the floor is you all's to discuss those 3 options, or if there are new options to be considered for you all to entertain those as you make your decision.
Mr. Chairman, I believe that we have a slide on Chief Naylor's proposal. Could we add that into
Correct, yes. Do you want me to go there immediately or go through the other scenarios?
You can
Okay.
go through.
So we now have, we had 4 scenarios at the last meeting. We've added the additional scenario from Chief Naylor. The first scenario was to distribute the $492,557 equally by increasing each department in the rescue squad by $37,889. So the new allocation for the 9 base departments in the rescue squad would be $250,000. And as you recall, and it has been mentioned before tonight, $250,000 was the amount recommended based on the fire study that we did back in 2020. The second scenario is based on commissioner feedback. This would increase the rescue squad funding to $300,000 and increase the base 9 fire department allocation by $44,963. The third one would be to increase the base 9 and rescue squad allocation by $32,755 and increase the 3 large departments by $55,000 each. The fourth scenario would be to increase the base 9 fire department allocations by the $37,889, increase rescue squad to $300, and increase the 3 large departments by $21,222. And then the fifth scenario is to increase the base 9 and rescue squads by $45,955 roughly, and increase the 3 large departments by $11,000 each.
Does anyone have any discussion or questions regarding those?
You could argue there's a 6th scenario that Mr. Keaton presented this evening, Chief Keaton presented this evening, and it goes back to what I said last month. There's unlimited combinations here, and and I don't know what's fair, I don't know what's unfair, but I make a motion to approve option 1 to divide the 492 by 13. I appreciate the fact, go back to what Chief Keaton said, there's going to have to be more money. This isn't the fix-all, but for now, I make that motion.
Okay. Is there a motion for option
Chairman,
1?
I'll second that motion.
I have a motion and a second for option number 1. Any further discussion?
I would like to say something before we vote. I want to thank Chief Naylor and Chief Keaton for constantly not only standing up for yourselves, but the other base departments, and always having a fair voice. No matter what, you always include everyone in your discussions. And I want to say, especially to Smith Grove, Moxville, and Advance, just because someone is standing up for someone who has been neglected and ignored does not mean that we're against those of you who are more blessed, just because you're blessed to be in the districts that you are, that are ever changing and ever growing. And your money will always continue to grow, which is why this should be the opportunity to give a larger portion to the base pay departments, because this is a unique opportunity that we do not always have, that we may never have again. But just as Moxville increased naturally by almost $59,000 this year, Smith Grove increased naturally by almost $79,000 this year, and Advance not only increased naturally by around $25,000, but you also have the opportunity to raise your own extra money if needed. But you all get offended and think someone is against you. That could not be further from the truth. Every citizen and every department in this county deserves our attention, and that is what this scenario voting should be about.
And Terry beat me to the punch on the motion. I would have, for the facts that Ms. Finney just presented, would have believed really that the most reasonable would be scenario 5 or 6. And for reasons that Chief Keaton has presented earlier. But I got beat to the punch. So but I do believe that those 2 scenarios actually the most reasonable in terms of reality. That Chief Naylor's proposal would have gotten, I believe, the smaller departments that have been stagnant over the last 15 years to 258, right? I believe that's what it was. And that would have been something that we could have lived with, I think, until we put our committee together that's going to talk about distribution of funds. And so, I'm going to oppose this, but that's the reason why. I believe the most reasonable scenarios would have been option 5 or 6.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to state my reason for seconding this motion, and that is that it's fair to everyone to get an equal share. We do know that some of the smaller ones need to be caught up with the bigger ones, but we need to do that probably not tonight, but to sit down and discuss, and we've done this before, the quarter-cent sales tax that needs to be used to fund the fire departments, and that way we can sit down at the table and decide who gets what, who needs what, and go from there.
All right. Call the vote. All in favor on option number 1? Raise your hand. 3, oppose? 3, 2 passes. Thank you. Next, we'll move to new business, do the litigation on the opioid. Mr. Barnett.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we received a letter last week from McKinsey and Company. They have a national lawsuit out against Purdue Pharma in Purdue Pharma's role in the opioid situation that we have going on now. They are asking local governments to join as part of their lawsuit to go after Purdue Pharma. Right now, the lawsuit, I believe, Ed, is in the court system in California.
There is one that's being consolidated in the Northern District of California. The actual lawsuit would be by the various entities against McKinsey and Company. The letter we received was from the law firm of Hill, Peterson, Casper, B., and Disary, which is one of the firms that we signed up with initially when we went with the first opioid litigation. What this would do, we would file another lawsuit in U.S. Federal District Court in Greensboro, in our middle district. There's already been an order signed that any lawsuits that come against McKinsey and Company be transferred out to the Northern California jurisdiction to be tried by a judge out there. And at that point in time, if there is a settlement or if there's a suit, then the judge in Northern California will be the one that will decide, is there going to be one attorney's fees fund established, and if so, what would be the percentage that the law firms would receive as attorney's fees out of that fund, similar to what happened in Ohio. What that percentage would be, heaven only knows. Judge could hear the case and decide just to give everything and not even have a fund set up. However, the law firms that are involved in this seem to think at this point in time there will be a fund set up and there will be caps on attorney's fees. However, when we started in the opioid litigation initially, we started not knowing that there was going to be any funds set up in the Ohio case and not knowing if we'd have to pay 25% or something less than 25%. And we proceeded, and it's come out to the good for us on that one. If we don't participate in this one, then we know we're going to get zero. If we participate, we're going to get some percentage, whether it be 75, 80, 85, whatever. Well, we know we'll be getting some percentage based upon the original attorney's agreement. I have been back and forth with Jim Peterson, who is one of the managing partners with the Charlestown, West Virginia law firm all day long. And, at this point in time, he is in a state of quandary as far as how attorney's fees are going to be, but he knows that at the most, that at the very most, that these law firms would get what we agreed to originally in the first 2016, September 2016 contract that we had with them. And they're going to honor that same contract with this.
Mr. Attorney, Mr. Manager, do you recommend that we?
I would recommend, because otherwise, if we don't file anything, we get zero.
Well, I'll go ahead and make a motion to join. If there are other questions, we can talk.
I just have one question, and when we initially joined the master settlement, if that's what you want to call it, there was some discussion about we'd be exposed potentially for some legal fees on the front end. Is this proposal take that off the table?
Takes that off the table.
We've only got upside. Okay.
Got upside, no downside, really.
Okay.
And really, the only catch is we need to respond before October 17th.
That's right.
I will second that motion then.
And what would need to be, have a motion to allow the county manager to sign off on a consent form. Allowing them
Here's
to
the motion.
So we got a motion and a second to allow Mr. Barnett to sign off on the intent form. Is that correct? All right.
Yes.
All in favor? I vote. Okay. All right, next, we'll go to the Advance Fire Department lease on new business. Mr. Barnett?
Just going to let Mr. Vogler explain where we are in this process.
Okay.
You've got in your packet two leases. One is the lease based upon the information that you had given me that I have prepared. And then a second one is the lease, and it was a red-lined lease that came back from Advance with changes at that point in time. The basic changes were that the 8 months that we have been using the property down there without paying anything other than just utilities, that we would pay the $8,000 or $1,000 a month on that, and continue to pay $1,000 a month so long as we needed the property, that we would continue to pay the utilities on that. There is two things that, and those are all policy issues you have to make. I can't make those out for you as the attorney. I'm just your attorney. I'm not a board member and don't have a say in what you should or shouldn't do on those areas. There is two things, though, that gives me heartburn. One is the liability. There is a provision in the lease that we got back that we would be liable for any injuries to any individuals in the fire department. I have a document that I circulated to all the departments in the county 2 or 3 years ago when I was going through and helping decide what needs to be in all contracts and what doesn't need to be in all contracts. And it's provisions about indemnity clauses. And there is 2 cases, the Stevenson versus Raleigh case and the Nash versus Town of Tarboro case, both by the North Carolina Supreme Court, that says that we cannot increase our legal liability beyond that authorized by the North Carolina State Constitution, North Carolina General Statutes, and that we cannot indemnify and hold people harmless or groups harmless in any contract. I have required all of our contracts to have provisions, have language in that, and everybody from Microsoft. I remember when there was something in a Microsoft contract, and I told John Gallimore that we had to have that stricken, and he says it's Microsoft; they won't strike anything. And I think John was surprised when they finally came back and they agreed to strike it. So you know, our North Carolina law is what our North Carolina law is. We cannot indemnify and hold people harmless above that which is allowable by North Carolina law. We've already got 2 court cases that say that. So I think that provision needs to be stricken. And then the only other thing is they took out the reverter in the property lease based upon a letter that they had received from Advance United Methodist Church that said that our administrative council unanimously agreed to give the county permission to grant all improvements and payment for use of the Advance Fire Road property in full to the Advance Fire Department. That's saying that they're waiving our rights to any funds, period. It doesn't say that they're not still reverters. In fact, Rodney sent me 2 letters, or 2 emails. One email was from Keith Bost, who said that, and there's 3 deeds in this property, and there's 3 tracts. The original tract came from Advance United Methodist Church, and it had the reverter in it, and that tract is where the bays are. There was another tract purchased later from the Patton brothers that doesn't have a reverter as you're facing the fire department, on the right-hand side of the fire department. Another tract that was purchased later that is where I think the actual pit and everything's probably on that property, and the outside furnace where they do the barbecues, and maybe even part of the building is on that property, and it does not have a reverter clause in it. But the center of that building has that reverter clause in it. So I still think we need to require, and the Advance is willing to sign off on it, that they sign off on that lease so that no questions asked. I mean, if Rodney and I both pass away tomorrow, and all of his board passes away tomorrow, and you guys pass away tomorrow, and everybody's new, and Advance United Methodist Church comes back and says, if you stop using it, it comes back to us. And Keith Boss says that, and also Oliver Nobles, who is their attorney, who was a retired retired Superior Court judge, and he says, quote, "The property described in the first deed you attached reverts to the church if the property is not used as a fire department." They're planning on using fire department from now on. And I know that, they know that, I think the church knows that. But from a technical standpoint, we still need to have the church sign off on that lease. Not that they're getting anything, just that they're giving up that right. So those are the only 2 things that deal from a legal standpoint. Everything else is policy standpoint that you will have to decide what to do on.
So if I'm hearing this correct, if we can take out the 2 things, but then we've got to go back to them for another signature, is that what you're saying?
Yeah. You need to agree to the lease itself, what the terms are on the lease itself. You have their proposed lease in front of you, and also the original lease, and that was based upon what you had instructed me to prepare initially. And their lease has additional things in it with regards to monies, and that's the policy decision you'll make on whether you agree with those dollar amounts. If you agree with those dollars amounts, you could instruct the county to enter into a lease as long as the church is added back on and as long as the liability issue's taken out.
And this we would only utilize this facility until we have the new building built.
That's what I would assume. I mean.
Year or so.
Yeah, a couple of years, something like that.
18 months.
Is that your timetable right now, is 18 months?
That's what we're looking at.
Okay.
I would, are you ready to discuss?
I'm ready. You sure?
Yeah.
I just have one point that I would like to be tidied up in the version that came from Advance, if we decide to use that version instead of what Ed presented to them. Under number 4, where the premises should be used, we're saying that they can continue to use that facility for activities and uses. I think that needs to be a little tighter. I think it's too open-ended, because the way that it reads to me, no matter what they wanted to use the building for, we would have to let them do so. And the reason we are even here, one of the main reasons was for the privacy of our EMS employees to have a place to be. So if they can come and go as they please, the privacy is not there. So I think that.
Yeah, and what they sent back was they could use it for storage of vehicles and equipment. Obviously, if we need a bay, we need to have it in there that we still get that one bay is reserved for us and everything. They still use it to store other things. In other words, we don't lease it and then we don't have a bay. And I assume, and Rodney may be able to answer this, and the EMS personnel that's there, they've got bathroom facilities, they got an office area, and do they also have an area for food and things like that? You know? Yeah.
If you'll look at what we put in our 2 bays, which are the 2 bays we're using now, basically, okay? And then the kitchen area is where they have their sitting room, their day room, their lounge area where they eat. They got that whole kitchen area. And then if you look, the back office is where they do all their work. And we requested them to do that back office. Joseph's under the same thing as I, for the HIPAA violations. We don't want people walking in, okay? So we want that locked off. That was why we said the back office. Restrooms are on both sides, bay side and kitchen side, they got access to. The only time that we were even considering the building, my board, 3/4 of them are here, was during the barbecue times. And if we had a family member that got killed in the line of duty, we need something to raise money to help him out, okay, in that area. God forbid we ever have that, but that was why that clause was put in there for y'all. Other than that, my board members are here. Mr. Robertson, our camp.
If we tighten that up,
Right,
language on
we'll
that.
spell out those.
Yeah, we can work something out between us on that.
Right, exactly, yeah. Other than that, I mean, that's, that Bay 3, we've got our equipment in, our trucks, see, and that van that runs, transport van that runs, and then we got an old engine in the back that we run for events.
Was that Bay 3, was that added on
That
later?
was.
I was thinking, I grew up as a boy,
Yeah.
right up the street.
Right.
And on the other side of
The original
of the
station
church.
takes in
And
that-
I was thinking the first 2 bays were the original station.
That's it, that
That's
first
right.
2 bays, and then it branched out on this side and went the other end, yes.
That's what I thought.
Anything?
So with the board, if you make a motion to accept what they provided with us tightening it up, would that be something you would want to do, or that's something y'all need to discuss?
I mean, I would still want us to be able to look at it again before, I feel like we would still need to see the final product before.
I think we can work something up on that.
Good to see y'all. I've never been at this part of the building, but
It's like being on the witness stand, isn't it?
yeah, my attorney right across from me. But we'll accept. I'm not speaking for the board, but as an attorney, it makes sense what Ed has said about the liability issue, and frankly, any types of things like that, those are things that should be able to be worked out between the boards and whoever's negotiating those points. The reversion issue is just a really interesting little legal issue, but it's practical too, because there is no reversion right in the church unless the station stops being used for fire department purposes. So it's been our position that the consent that the church provided in the form of the letter, and they frankly, they did that earlier, about a decade ago, when the rescue squad was lease space. That is, and that's what we've been careful about indicating from this document, because we're still using it for fire department purposes. We're still storing equipment. We're still having the barbecue. We're still doing fire camp. We're doing other things. But, you know, we work with county, and county asked us to. So de facto, we've had a lease arrangement since February of 2022, and it's worked out fine. It says we just need the paperwork, and there might be a different way of doing this, to reflect that the fire department continues to use this for fire department purposes, while the EMS is having a bay and using the space until you can build a new station. It's as simple as that. So from my perspective, and as an attorney, and Ed has a great legal mind, it's more a matter of Methodist Church consenting, which I believe they've already done. You just attach the letter to the lease agreement, whatever that language ultimately is. We would have what we need going forward. And that way it would be clear that the fire department's still using that property for fire department purposes. So,
But they've just consented, all the money's going to the fire department. They've not consented to do away with the reversionary
I
clause.
think it's implied, I mean,
Yeah.
they passed it in when they let the rescue squad do it. I mean, and I'm not aware of any, board
Yeah.
objection to us
know,
using it. And there's no
I
reversion right.
I agree.
Because it's
I
still
agree.
being used for fire department purposes.
I agree that it's probably going to be used from now on. And I practiced law as a dirt attorney for some 25 years, doing title searches and all, and I wouldn't pass title on it unless something was taken care of that. Very similar to if I have a life estate interest in some property you own, and I might live forever, but then again, I might die tomorrow. And if the bank, if you go to the bank and ask the bank for a loan, they're going to require not only your signature on that deed of trust, but also my signature as the life tenant in that also.
I hear you, but on the other hand, if something had triggered the reversion right, I could see why they'd need to be a party to the lease. Nothing has happened to trigger that right.
And as long as the fire department uses it, it'll never trigger it.
Right, so they don't need to be a party to the lease. And let's
The what ifs.
look at a compromise. If the church will agree and consent, and we put that in a letter and attach it to the agreement, would that be sufficient?
Do we need to defer this? I didn't realize there was a sticking point here.
We gave a marked up version last Monday. We should have communicated back and forth so that you're not drawn into legal issues, in my opinion.
I'm sorry, Dan, I make a motion to defer until the next, I'm sorry, Terry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, I'll make my comment.
Well, it sounds like you guys need to talk about this a little more in depth and tightening up item 4 of what Benita's concerned with. This seems like a legal concern here. So I just make a motion to defer to the next meeting. We should be able to, okay.
I'll second that, but I got something I want to add. The agreement that the Advance sent back spoke to utilities being open-ended. I think we should pay whatever our incremental cost is for the utilities. I'm not comfortable with being open-ended, but I would ask the attorneys, since sounds like we are going to defer this too, I would suggest that we cap utilities at $350 a month, because my understanding, the average is about $550 a month. And they've got some they've clearly, us being there and them accommodating us, there is an incremental cost, and we should bear that, in my opinion. But I'm not comfortable with it being open-ended, so I would recommend $350 for negotiating purposes per month.
And as your attorney, I would say this: we know that out of the 52 weeks, there's going to be 2 weeks going to be used for the barbecue, and I'm sure there's probably going to be additional cost utility costs during that 2 weeks and all than what you would have otherwise. I know from talking with Robin West, that she indicated that there was another fire department that because of a barbecue, they actually, to stand up, what was it that they actually did as far as their bills?
It was my understanding that because of the weeks that they had their barbecue, a different fire department, that put them into a different utility rate bracket. And it was because of the utility rate bracket they were put into, a more expensive one, that was part of their reason, that and the price of pork, that they don't do barbecues anymore.
I think that report has had mixed reviews, quite frankly. I know what you're talking about.
Right.
But I'm not saying that's wrong or right.
Right,
But if you
exactly.
cap your utilities at a number, pick a number,
Yeah.
you've solved the problem, if you
Correct.
believe that we've got an incremental cost that we should share.
And your suggestion was 350?
I'm suggesting 350, but that's just,
know.
I'm told the average is about 550, so that's us bearing more than half, but clearly they had some cost before we got there, so.
Any other questions? Rob? Okay.
Got a motion? Did you have a second?
I seconded to
We got a
defer.
motion and a second to defer it till next month, till November the 7th. Is that correct? All right, all in favor to defer? I vote, okay. All right, next we'll move to the county manager report. Barnett?
Yes, Mr. Chair, on some more lighter subjects tonight, I think it's highly important as a county that we recognize all of our employees who are going above and beyond, not quite on the level of gyms, but our employees who step up and take on state-level offices. I think it's important that we, I'm going to be blunt, we stack them with Davie County folks as much as possible. And one of those employees, Marshall McGraw, who is our field crops agent for our cooperative extension, was recently elected president of the Western Central Association of County Agricultural Agents. So I wanted to congratulate her, and I wanted to encourage all of our employees, if you have an opportunity to be on a state board or a national board, to take that initiative and represent Davie County across the state and across the country. And in this case, Ms. McGraw will be representing us. Actually, she already has represented us in Florida this summer. So I think that's important for us to recognize our employees. Second, as part of Cooperative Extension, they have a bicycle helmet initiative going on right now. They are trying to reach out to our less fortunate folks to make sure that they have proper bike safety. They have an event coming up on October the 16th from 4 to 5:30 at William R. Davie Fire Department. So it's open to the public, and I really encourage anyone, as we've talked about traffic tonight, if you have young ones who are biking and need that equipment, to look into that event on the 16th at William R. Davie Fire Department. I'm always going to take an opportunity, starting October the 20th, early voting starts. We have early voting at 3 different locations: at our Davie County Board of Elections site, at the Bermuda Run Town Hall, and the Jerusalem Fire Department. I think that's an important function for all of us to do, and we are taking every step to make it as easy as possible. So early voting starts on October 20th. Again, I want to thank our Register of Deeds for her efforts tonight, and our Think of Vet program as we roll up towards November and Veterans Day. I think it's important that we always take an opportunity to thank those who have served our country. So I'm really happy to see this program take off, and we had a great presentation tonight. I want to thank all of our folks in public safety for their effort, public safety, communications, IT, for their efforts this weekend as we prepared for Hurricane Ian. I think we dodged a bullet on this particular matter, but our folks were prepped and ready to go just in case the situation did turn ugly. We did a great job of preparing and having everyone staged, ready to go. And then finally tonight, I want to ask our interim EMS director, Joseph Ashburn, to come up. As you all know, EMS has been a quiet topic here in Davie County. And I tasked Mr. Ashburn with some wonderful opportunities to show off the great skill and ability of our folks. And starting October the 18th, but you can sign up today, we are going to offer a Davie County EMS Academy. This is geared to allow the public an opportunity to come meet Joseph and the wonderful folks of EMS and to learn what they do and how they do. It's going to be twice a week from 7 to 9 from October 18th until November the 7th. It's free of charge. I think it's a wonderful opportunity for folks to learn the ins and outs of what they do. And then for the month of October, and I'll let Joseph explain a little more detail on what our folks in EMS are doing. And we have a couple of those here tonight. And wanted to take this opportunity to show off a wonderful fashion. I'll talk into the microphone, but the EMS folks for October will be wearing shirts to signify Breast Cancer Month. And I'll let our lovely model show those off, and Joseph can talk more about it.
Board, thank you for allowing us to come up. Like Mr. Barnett said, we're going through for the month of October. Last year we had pink gloves. This year we went to the T-shirts. This is very close and dear to me. My mother passed away in 2014 with breast cancer. So when we decided to go through and do this, I put it out to one of the supervisors, hey, can you make this happen? And delegating this out, and he went through and got the shirts for us. So all the crews that's working has these shirts to go through and wear for the whole month. So this is something that you'll go through and see. We're going to continue to go through and do this moving forward. We may change the designs and let the crews go through and come up with the design in the future. So can I allude to the academy?
Sure.
The academy, one reason we're going through and doing this, and we're asking for you guys' help, especially with the fire services, to get this promoted, is on a statewide level, we are getting short on paramedics and EMTs going through. We want to go through and let this come out and allow people to see what we go through and do, hopefully as a recruitment tool as well, to be able to go through and bring different ones in. It's hitting different aspects. Logan Cartner and Daniel Calloway is kind of heading this up for us, but it's getting 911 communications involved. So whenever you call 911, they see how this whole thing transitions and sees how the help's going to come to them. So it's opening it up not only to EMS, but to different parts of the county. So, but we do greatly appreciate the opportunity to stand before you and represent the EMS and the county. So thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you. And that's the end of my report.
All right, thank you. Go to Commissioners' comments. Ms. Finney?
I'm going to be short tonight because we've been here a while. I want to piggyback on what Brian Barnett said. Thank you to everyone who was prepared for this weekend. We were very blessed. We did dodge a bullet, I believe, and did not get near the damage or conditions that we could have, but I know many of you were camped out at your stations and working when you were supposed to be off, and I'm sure you had to leave your families and get childcare and all those things, and we just thank everyone that was involved in being prepared for what could have been. And just hope that everyone has a good week. I also want to give a shout out to the school system. I appreciate them being proactive also and having the remote learning day on Friday to keep our kids safe. And, you know, that's just what it's all about, us making good decisions, working together, and making sure that everyone is happy and safe and just making this county the best we can. So thank you.
Commissioner Jones?
I was down in Nags Head. It was a little more breezy and wet down there, I'll tell you. But I really appreciate everyone here who steps up always to protect the citizens of Davie County and serve the citizens of Davie County. Benita, thank you for being a little short because I'm going to be just a tad bit longer than I normally am because I need to speak to something that I only have an opportunity to do it right now. And I want to get you guys out of here, but I need to speak to this. Approximately 2 to 3 weeks ago, I began to get calls from people I love, people I trust, people who were concerned about issues going on at the Davidson Community College. in the classroom. And I want to preface this by saying there are great things happening. 98% of what is going on at Davidson Community College and the public schools is positive for the citizens of Davie County. But what I was alerted to and what I know is a fact is a problem. The issue of critical theory, which is a Marxist-Leninist class warfare theory that's permeated our colleges, beginning in our universities, beginning probably in the early 60s, is something we don't want in the classrooms of Davie County or at Davie Community College. The issue of critical race theory, which you all probably have heard something about, this is the Western version of critical theory, where critical theory used class warfare to divide people and divide countries and literally cause governments to topple to communist dictatorships. Critical race theory is the same thing, except in America it uses race to divide people. It is a racist version of Marxism. I had 4 parents contact me because their children were sent to the Davidson Community College to sit in a communications class. Actually, it was 5 students. 4 of the parents contacted me. Thank goodness, those 5 students had the backbone to stand up and walk out of the class when this started. I have slides. I can tell you what was promulgated to those children, forced down their throats in that classroom, was nothing but the radical opinions of a professor being taught as fact to kids in a communications class. I had another parent contact me who it was in, and I'm reading this, in an interpersonal communications class that told me that the textbook was full of issues of critical race theory and critical theory taught in a communications class. Now, I just say to you this. We funded the Davidson County Community College, and they deserve it. They're doing great things in connection with economic development and technical training and all the things that they do with our community. But this has to be stopped. This has to be stopped. And I know it's going on. I've been contacted by those parents who contacted leadership at the college, and they basically were called helicopter parents. This cannot go on. It may be 1% of what's happening down there, but it's 1% of poison that needs to be retracted from that school. I love them. I work on economic development, and we work with the community colleges. We work with Ignite Davie, but we can't allow this to seep itself in. And I can tell you, it's happening in more than just those 2 classes. As I've talked to people about this, I'm hearing more and more about this. The community college of this state do great things, but they do not need to propagandize and brainwash our young people. That's not what they're there for. It's not what they're there for. They're there to train. And these classes do not teach critical thinking because they don't teach both sides of the issue. You want to teach critical thinking, you teach all sides of an issue and let the child make a decision. You don't go into the classroom with an agenda on your mind and shove it down the child's throat and force a child to get up and walk out of a class. So, budget is coming up, and I I support funding Davidson Community College, but I do not support this. And I tell you, these were high school students. These were not community college students. I think there's another issue that needs to be discussed about why we're sending high school students down there, because we don't have the offerings at Davie High for their AP courses and the things that they need to get in to college, and there's issues of waiting courses. I won't get into all that. But I just want people to be aware, we have to be vigilant. We know what's happening. We see on Fox News and CNN all the things that are being taught in our universities, but we got to make sure that this doesn't seep into Davie County. And so, Mr. Chairman, I just had to bring that up because, to be quite frank with you, the people that contacted me, I respect, and many of them you all know and know well and love and respect too. They were extremely concerned for their kids. And there's no reason we send a kid to the community college where the parent cannot be completely secure about what their child is learning, and that they're there to learn, not be brainwashed. So all I would tell you is, if you know anyone on that Davie Community College board, speak to them. They control the curriculum at the community college in ways that we cannot control. All we can control are budget dollars. They can get into that classroom and investigate what's happening. So, Mr. Chairman, thank you for letting me speak tonight, and thank all of y'all for being here.
Poindexter.
I'd just like to say thank you to all the folks that came out tonight, especially all the folks that came out and got up and stated their opinions on the different subjects that we've covered tonight. And I would like to give a special shout out to our veterans. They're always on our mind, and we're always looking for ways to help out as when it comes to the veterans. And the fire departments, they do a lot with what money they have. And we really appreciate them and the job that they do. And also appreciate Advance for working with us for the last year, thereabouts, on trying to provide the services for the folks around Advance. Thank you so much for being patient with us.
Commissioner Rediger.
Thank you. I want to thank all the employees for being here, and all the people that are in attendance tonight. But our employees, they do above and beyond always, and we appreciate that. I think the emergency management people for this weekend's already been stated, but we dodged a bullet, but appreciate being prepared. I want to thank Kelly Funderburk. That's a great program for the vets. That's really good, and I hope everyone will participate in the green light for honoring the veterans. As we talk about, heard something about it tonight, freedom is not free, so we need to remember that. Last thing I would say is Sunday I had the honor yesterday to go to Eaton Baptist Church and their celebration of their 250th anniversary. It was 250 years of providing religious institution in this county. That's amazing. I mean, it was founded 64 years before we were even a county. So when you start thinking about 250 years, that's a long time for anything here on earth. So congratulations to them. It was very, very touching. And with that, thank you for being here, and see you next month.
I'd like to thank everybody for coming out tonight. With respect to the fire, you know, the groundwork has been laid, but we have to continue to make leaps and bounds to find more funding mechanisms, and we're going to continue to do that. So I want everybody to understand that this is not the last thing you're going to see. We're going to continue to do that. I appreciate what you do. You know, you guys and girls do, you know, wonders for the world, and I know you don't think it's hard for us to sit up here and make these decisions, but we all appreciate what you do, and I want you to know that. and prays from cooler weather for the fall. That's all I've got to say. With that, I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I have a motion of second. All in favor? 5-0, we adjourn. Thank you.